on the office, we're a team of 4 people, as you can see here. We have Poonam Yadav, who's the chair. She's assistant professor within a Department of Computing for University of York. Dr. Noura Al-Mubayed, she's also associate professor, Department of Computing at University of Durham. And it's myself, Lubna Khan. I'm the Publicity and Outreach Officer, the only non-academic on the team. And we've got Anastasia here. She is our communication specialist based in Cambridge. For ACM-W UK, our broad key objectives are to celebrate women in computing. And how do we do that? It's by supporting women, by creating an ecosystem based on inclusivity, diversity, and encouragement. We promote and celebrate contributions of women in computing and other related areas, by which I mean it's not specifically STEM, but also other areas where computing becomes part of the domain. We also aim at bridging gaps between education and employment, and we challenge stereotypes to encourage more women to choose computing for academic and career choices. So if we look at the bigger challenge, we've had plenty of times that people have addressed the gender gap in technology, but if we look closely, is that really a problem that exists within industry alone? So here are excerpts from the report for the state of engineering, published by Engineering UK. For 2 consecutive years, I've gone back to 2018, where we see that we have only 12% of women in engineering. This is for all of STEM-related job roles in industry. And again, in 2019, we've had a slight rise in numbers, which has doubled from 12% to 24%. But still, UK has the lowest number of female engineers in any European country. So something doesn't look right. So for me, I kind of raised that question to see if that is a problem that's unique to computing or tech industry. And if we look closely at graduates, people who've completed their undergraduate courses and gone on to employment. So that's a snapshot from a report published by the Office for National Statistics back in 2017, 3 years ago. But what do we see here? Let me just hover over here. So in medicine, we have roughly 50% or so males who graduated. Then coming here, we've got slightly higher numbers, closer to 60% in business and finance, but all other STEM areas, we see that there's clearly a male domination there. We see physical and environmental sciences, about 70%, nearly 80% within technology alone. Engineering is closer to 90%. That says something about women being underrepresented within industry, even amongst new graduates. And when it comes to digital and computing education within UK, I looked at a couple of other expert opinions that ended up being published. So on the BBC News, titled Computing in Schools in Steep Decline. This was published last year in May. We see that there is a feeling of being disenfranchised from digital education that particularly impacts girls and poorer students. That was one thing to make note of. Another one falls within the outreach program launched by Imperial College London that says only 20% of computing candidates choose at GCSE and only 10% of the whole population of girls that is who give their choices to learn computing at A-level, which kind of raises an area of concern. There is something underlying there and we don't know what's going on. further deeper, when I did a little bit of research, I figured that there is something about enjoyment, and girls don't seem to enjoy the subject, computing. So that is something to worry about, I think. So if we look at this graph, it was taken from a report for the longitudinal study of young people in England, published by the Department of Education. We see particularly IT technology over here that seems to suffer the most. We've got only 4% of girls who say they enjoy computing. That's at Key Stage 4, that covers years 9, 10, and 11 at high schools. Something doesn't look right there. And if we look at the intention of students who plan to take computing at A levels, then again, a similar trend seems to reflect over here. Although we've got girls kind of dominating the group here for biology, all other STEM-related subjects seems to suffer. And the biggest areas of decline are here at engineering, which is less than 1%, followed by computing, which is only at 3% compared to 16% of boys who at least have plans to take computing for A levels. So that kind of brings me to this place where we need to start looking at challenges that we can address as ACM-W UK's, the team that deals with the outreach program. So one of the things on the agenda that we have is we're going to address the challenges that have already been identified in all the research reports that we've done a little bit of homework on. To start with, it is gender stereotypes and the perception of male dominance within the tech culture. And girls just don't feel like they belong to tech industry, let alone computing. They just don't see any girls around there, women over there. So that is a challenge in itself. That's followed by a lack of awareness and knowledge about opportunity. A lot of girls and even students generally coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, they don't have much awareness about what is available out there. And if you need to identify opportunity, where should you look for it? And whom should you ask about it? So those are typically the questions that they tend to have. That is then followed by a perception of a lack of representation in tech. That is kind of, to a large extent, it is true. There are fewer women in technology, even in employment as we see now. But how we can challenge that is to promote existing women in technology, the ones who have already made it out there. If we give them a platform and promote them, then there is a possibility that more that they get more visibility and they will be able to aspire younger women, girls in high schools, and girls who are still in education to kind of aspire to grow up to be like them. That is again mimicked by this area where there are fewer role models in technology that girls have to connect with. So by promoting existing women from technology, we then create the opportunity to present women as role models to younger generation. And finally, we have access to subject matter experts and domain leaders that children from disadvantaged backgrounds, young people who come from adverse backgrounds and they don't have access to subject experts or domain experts, then we can kind of bridge that gap by giving them the opportunity to reach out and connect to people from industry and academia. The ACM-W's outreach initiatives focus group tends to narrow down for this particular initiative at students in comprehensive education. That would be year 8 and above. Girls in particular, but then it can also extend to include students from disadvantaged backgrounds who may otherwise not have the opportunity to get on board with this kind of an initiative. And why have I narrowed down to years 8 and beyond, and why not much younger students? That is typically the question that's likely to rise. But the intention here is to kind of target that age group, because that is the time when they will be deciding on their subject options for their GCSEs and further. So that year group kind of becomes crucial, where they need to be making decisions. Sometimes they are not prepared, or they are ill-informed or poorly equipped to make such serious decisions. So that would be a good place for us to get started with. Why? Because the impact that these subject choices are likely to have, they kind of determine the trajectory that they are likely to have in terms of professional progression, future learning, employability, etc. And how are we going to get through to these students? That's via our outreach initiatives in partnership with our volunteer groups, who come from both academia, as students, as educators, and from industry, who are working professionals. So where do we fit in this pipeline? Where does ACM-W UK fit in? We tend to be the enablers of facilitators. So we kind of sit between volunteers to the left and the institutions to the right, who then have access to students whom they have identified as those needing of this kind of support. So we don't directly go out there and connect with students, but it'll be via institutions and organized bodies who can work with students and those who need that kind of support. The current agenda that we have for 2020 is in delivering a couple of initiatives. The first one would be as hands-on coding workshops that can be delivered virtually, and we do have the flexibility of making use of this COVID lockdown period. Although it's not ideal, but it is deliverable, even given the situation that we have right now. But it can also, going forward, be delivered on site if the need does arise. We can also deliver interviews or question and answer sessions for students to connect with working professionals. That will give them the opportunity to ask them questions, have speed networking sessions or practice interview sessions that will kind of give them a taste of what it's like to be applying for jobs or applying for universities. So it'll give them the opportunity to connect with people. May not be directly face-to-face, but virtually that can be organized as well. Then we've got proposals for blog posts, video recordings of volunteer participants. So this is, as we have it planned, this will cover areas of educational background needed to be able to apply for jobs or to make successful university applications, and what a typical day at work looks like. So that might give the opportunity to have specific questions that can be drafted, circulated among volunteers, and we can have all the responses recorded and shared with student cohorts. Then we've got virtual talks and meetup sessions aimed at offering support for those who are currently in year groups who are taking their exams, likely to be making applications for university admissions within the next year or so, who may want to ask specific questions. So there we have our student ambassadors, student volunteers from universities who are very close to their own process of making university applications, so they can give advice and support, guidance, whatever is needed to kind of help students get on board with their further learning. And finally, we've got mentorship programs where we can have both student ambassadors from universities supporting students at high schools and sixth form colleges, as well as those from industry or working professionals who can support aspiring professionals themselves. They could be those in sixth form colleges or in vocational training or other BTEC courses who are looking at launching their first careers, landing up with their first jobs in industry. And in terms of scope of benefit that we have here, the opportunity that we can offer via these workshops, via these initiatives, is to kind of give the chance to take learning beyond taught content, taught curriculum that tends to be very exam-based. Sometimes we do hear that students are learning with the primary focus of passing or clearing an exam, but then there's a lot more to that when it comes to computing. So this could be used as an opportunity to learn based on activities, real life scenarios where generally we are seeking answers or kind of solving problems as how we see it in the industry. We can also access guidance and support for exams and university applications, as was mentioned a couple of minutes earlier, and guidance and support for job interviews and skills enhancement needed for employment as well. Then there is access to mentorship and support groups. So we could assign student ambassadors who can serve as mentors to younger learners from within computing and be that support group for them, and offer to support young students with questions or any kind of mentoring needs that they may have. And finally, it's, I think, a very good opportunity to expose how agile and comfortably people in tech industry tend to work, even if it's nearly impossible in other domains of work. The tech industry has been working even during this period of lockdown. We've all been working from home, and this is a very good opportunity to kind of expose that as a need to have that kind of a mindset that you don't need to be stationed on site all the time. You can comfortably work from home. And how can you liaise with the rest of the team? So that kind of exposes the needs around the soft skills as well, to be in a tech role with an industry, such as communicative skills, presentation skills, and even public speaking, even when we're only speaking via a monitor, via a webcam, but still these are all the soft skills needed for a technical role in industry, and that is a very good opportunity to expose all of these needs. The scope of delivery here for outreach initiatives, as things stand, given the current lockdown, the opportunity to go face-to-face and deliver on-site is kind of limited as of now. So virtual delivery is something we can deliver, and that is absolutely possible, even today as we stand. But going forward, face-to-face delivery might be something we will have to review and go over with all the parties involved. In terms of next steps, we do have a website, and I've put the link here. I'm happy to share it with the participants at the end of the presentation. But those of you who would like to support us as an institution, you will find a link to register your interest via a Google Forms on the site here. The link is shared. And the same for volunteering as well, if you'd like to sign up as a volunteer and support us in this cause.